The rain was an unrelenting assault against the glass skin of Adelaide Corporation Tower, a rhythmic drumming that echoed in the pre-dawn hours. Inside, Archie Lambert, a solitary figure against the corporate behemoth, guided his janitor's cart through the deserted corridors. The fluorescent lights hummed a monotonous tune, casting a sterile glow on the polished floors. Perched on a nearby bench, her small legs swinging back and forth, sat Adelaide, Archie's 7-year-old daughter. Her worn, plush rabbit, a silent confidant, was clutched tightly in her small hands. Suddenly, the shadows of the stairwell gave birth to 3 men. Their movements were purposeful, predatory. Their eyes, cold and calculating, locked onto Adelaide. A silent alarm blared in her young mind. "Daddy, please stop them." The cry, sharp and piercing, ripped through the artificial quiet. Archie whirled around. Years of dormant instinct roared back to life, eclipsing thought. He became a machine, a honed instrument of defense. 6 seconds. That's all it took. A lightning-fast pivot. An elbow, guided with deadly precision, slammed into the first man's larynx, cutting off his air supply. A perfectly weighted punch landed on the second man's temple, sending him crashing to the ground. A sweeping kick, a blur of motion, connected with the third man's legs, felling him like a tree. He landed heavily, his consciousness stolen by the impact against the unforgiving marble. The next morning dawned with the arrival of a government motorcade outside the dilapidated apartment building Archie and Adelaide called home. It was a stark contrast to their humble existence, a jarring intrusion of power and authority. Archie Lambert had cultivated invisibility, a shield against a past he desperately tried to bury. At 36, he stood tall, a lean 6'2", his broad shoulders testament to years of rigorous discipline, not casual gym visits. His dark brown hair was cropped short, a legacy of his former life, a detail unnoticed, or perhaps deliberately ignored, by his employers at Adelaide Corporation. His hands, rough and calloused from the mundane tasks of cleaning, bore faint, intricate scars, silent storytellers of a life he refused to discuss. He had been part of something elite, lethal, a counterterrorism unit so deeply buried within the intelligence apparatus that it existed only in whispers. Retrieval operations, they called it, a sanitized euphemism for missions where they plucked the children of politicians from war-torn basements, extracted hostages from compounds that officially didn't exist. Archie excelled. He was too good. He could assess a room's threat level in seconds, neutralize dangers before they materialized, and carry a wounded civilian for miles through hostile territory without faltering. Then Helen happened. Helen, with her infectious laugh and unwavering belief that Archie was more than just a weapon. They married in a quiet ceremony, a promise of a normal life exchanged. Soon they were expecting. Archie vowed to leave the shadows after one last mission, a promise fate cruelly denied him the chance to keep. Complications during Adelaide's birth stole Helen away. Doctors spoke of hemorrhages and cardiac arrests, clinical terms that meant nothing to Archie. His world had fractured. His wife was gone, leaving him with a newborn daughter who needed him more than any Black Ops mission ever could. So he vanished, not from Adelaide's life, but from the world that knew him as a lethal operative. He embraced the anonymity of a janitor. The pay was abysmal. The hours were punishing, but it allowed him to remain close to his daughter, to be the constant presence she desperately needed. He toiled through the nights at Adelaide Corporation Tower, one of the city's glistening monuments to wealth and power. During the day, he was simply Adelaide's father. At night, while she slept in the employee lounge, her dreams undisturbed, or diligently completed her homework under the cold glow of the vending machines, he cleaned the offices where decisions worth millions were casually made by people who never truly saw him. Adelaide Lambert was the antithesis of her father. Where Archie was reserved and taciturn, she was endlessly curious, a bright spark of inquisitiveness. Where he concealed, she revealed, her emotions worn openly on her sleeve. At 7, she possessed her mother's radiant blonde hair and her father's piercing gray eyes. She was reserved around other children, a little shy, but utterly fearless with her father. She peppered him with questions. Why did birds migrate south? How did skyscrapers defy gravity? Did the stars know they were being watched? Archie answered what he could, fabricating explanations when his knowledge fell short. She was his universe, and preserving her innocence meant keeping the violence of his past at bay. Alexandra Rhodes ran Adelaide Corporation with the strategic precision and emotional detachment of a seasoned general commanding an army. At 33, she was younger than most of the board members who constantly attempted to undermine her authority. She wore her position like a suit of armor, always impeccably dressed, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her crimson V-neck dresses tailored to project power without apology. She navigated her building as if it were an extension of her own will, because, in every sense that mattered, it was. But power had its price. It brought with it the unwelcome company of ghosts. When Alexandra was 14, she was abducted. Her father, a prominent senator, had made enemies who knew the most effective way to cripple a man was to strike at his children. She spent 4 harrowing days imprisoned in darkness, the sounds of muffled footsteps echoing above her head, constantly wondering if she would ever see the sun again. Then a figure emerged from the shadows. She never clearly saw his face, only felt strong arms lifting her. Heard a calm, reassuring voice cutting through her fear. "You're safe now," as he carried her through what felt like miles of dense forest. By the time the official rescue team finally arrived, she was already free. Her rescuer vanished without a trace. The trauma specialist her father hired assured her that the memories would fade with time. They didn't. The feeling of utter helplessness remained etched in her mind. She dedicated her life to ensuring she would never feel that vulnerable again. Control became her guiding principle, her religion. Trust became a luxury she could not afford. And the janitor who worked in her building each night? He was invisible to her, just another cog in the vast machine that kept her empire running. Until the night 3 men came for his daughter. The attack occurred in Section 7 of the 42nd floor, near the executive suites. Archie had just finished cleaning the conference rooms and was heading toward the service elevator when Adelaide piped up, telling him she needed to use the restroom. He directed her to the one near the waiting area. She had just turned the corner when the stairwell door swung open. 3 men. Not security. Not employees. They moved with the calculated grace of hunters, and their eyes immediately fixed on Adelaide. The little girl froze, her blood turning to ice in her veins. They were 20 feet away, now 15, now 10. She could clearly see their faces, cold, professional, devoid of any trace of mercy. Her lungs fought for air. "Daddy, please stop them." Archie Lambert didn't think. Thinking took too long, involved too much deliberation. His body remembered what his conscious mind had desperately tried to forget. He was already in motion when the first man reached for Adelaide. The janitor's uniform ceased to matter. The mop cart clattered to the side. Forgotten. He closed the distance in 3 fluid strides. The first attacker barely registered Archie's presence before an elbow, honed to lethal precision, slammed into his throat. Precise. Calculated. The kind of strike that didn't kill but utterly incapacitated. The man crumpled to the ground, gasping for air. The second attacker threw a punch, a wild haymaker that would have shattered the jaw of an ordinary man. Archie slipped the blow with effortless grace, redirected the attacker's momentum, and drove his fist deep into the man's solar plexus. The attacker folded like a house of cards. The third man, realizing he was outmatched, drew a knife. Big mistake. Archie caught his wrist in a vice-like grip, twisted until something popped, and swept his legs out from under him. The man's head cracked against the marble floor, the sound echoing through the silent corridor. 6 seconds. 3 men down. Adelaide stood frozen, her blue eyes wide with shock and disbelief. Then she ran. Not away, but towards her father, seeking the safety of his embrace. She crashed into his arms, and he held her tight, his heart hammering against his ribs. She was crying, her small body trembling uncontrollably. "It's okay, sweetheart. It's okay. Daddy's here." But it wasn't okay. Archie knew with a sickening certainty that these weren't just random thugs. Their stance, their coordination, their equipment all screamed professionals. Someone had sent them, and, more terrifyingly, someone had sent them to a place where his daughter was. He glanced at the security camera blinking red in the corner. Then, he looked at the 3 unconscious men sprawled on the floor. He had maybe 5 minutes before backup arrived, before questions were asked that he couldn't or wouldn't answer. He pulled Adelaide close and moved quickly. He knew where the camera blind spots were. He knew which stairwell had a broken lock. By the time security arrived, they would find 3 disoriented men with no explanation and no janitor in sight. That night, sleep eluded Archie. He sat in their cramped apartment, watching the street below through the gaps in the torn curtains. Adelaide slept fitfully, crying out twice in her dreams. Both times, he was there instantly, holding her hand, whispering reassurances that the monsters weren't real. But he knew better. Monsters were very real, and they knew where he lived. Morning arrived with the unwelcome wail of sirens, but not police sirens. This was something different. Adelaide was eating cereal at their small kitchen table when Archie heard them. The unmistakable sound of a government motorcade. He cautiously pulled back the curtain. 5 black SUVs with government plates blocked the street. Men in tactical vests were establishing a perimeter. And emerging from an armored Cadillac in the center of the convoy was Alexandra Rodas. She wore a striking red dress with a V-neck cut, her blonde hair pulled back, her expression inscrutable behind designer sunglasses. Her presence in this dilapidated neighborhood, where rust stained the buildings and laundry hung precariously from fire escapes, was a sight that defied explanation. Neighbors spilled onto their stoops, their faces a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. People pulled out their phones, recording the spectacle. A CEO didn't visit the poor side of town with a government escort unless something seismic was about to happen. Alexandra walked directly towards Archie's building, her steps deliberate and unwavering. 2 men in dark suits flanked her, their eyes scanning the surroundings. She ascended the 4 flights of stairs with the same confidence she would display entering a boardroom. When she knocked on Archie's door, the sound was steady and professional. Adelaide looked at her father, her eyes filled with questions. Archie placed a finger to his lips, a silent plea for quiet, and opened the door. Alexandra stood in the hallway, her high heels sinking slightly into the threadbare carpet, a relic from the 1980s. Up close, stripped of the corporate hierarchy, Archie could see that she was younger than he had initially thought, and scared. Trying desperately to conceal it, but undeniably scared. Mr. Lambert. Her voice was perfectly controlled. We need to talk. Immediately. Archie stepped aside, gesturing for her to enter. Adelaide peeked out from behind him, her stuffed rabbit clutched tightly in her arms. Alexandra's gaze softened imperceptibly when she saw the little girl. Then, the carefully constructed mask returned to her face. About last night. Archie kept his tone neutral. Yes? Alexandra removed her sunglasses, her eyes sharp and unwavering. So, you admit it was you? I admit I protected my daughter from 3 men who had no business being there. Alexandra studied him intently, a clinical assessment. She noted the subtle military posture he couldn't fully suppress, the way his eyes tracked her security detail outside, the faint scars on his knuckles, the aura of calm that emanated from someone who had faced far worse situations. No ordinary janitor takes down 3 trained operatives in 6 seconds, Mr. Lambert. No ordinary CEO shows up at a janitor's apartment with government security. They stared at each other, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Adelaide tugged on Archie's sleeve. Daddy, who's the fancy lady? Alexandra's carefully composed expression cracked slightly. She knelt down to Adelaide's eye level. I'm Alexandra. I work in the building where your daddy works. He did something very brave last night. He's always brave, Adelaide said simply, her voice filled with unwavering admiration. Alexandra stood up, regaining her composure. May I sit down? Archie gestured towards their worn couch, its springs groaning in protest. Alexandra sat down, looking strangely out of place amidst their thrift store furniture and patched walls. Her security detail remained stationed in the hallway, their presence a silent reminder of the power she wielded. When the door closed, she spoke, her voice low and serious. I've been followed for 3 months. Professional surveillance. Someone breached my personal security network. At first, my team thought it was corporate espionage. Then we started noticing patterns. The same faces at different events. Cars that appeared too consistently. Last week, my head of security showed me footage of 3 men conducting reconnaissance at Adelaide Corporation. The same 3 men who attacked your daughter last night. Archie felt his blood run cold. They weren't after Adelaide. No, they were after me, but I wasn't there. I changed my schedule at the last minute. Security believes they were trying to grab leverage. Your daughter was in the wrong place, or the right place, Archie said quietly. Depending on your perspective. Alexandra leaned forward, her gaze intense. Mr. Lambert, whoever sent those men knows you stopped them. They know you're not what you appear to be. My security ran your background. Your employment history only goes back 7 years. Before that, nothing. No college records, no prior addresses, no digital footprint. You're a ghost. I'm a janitor. No, you're someone who became a janitor. There's a difference. She paused, her eyes searching his. I need to know what we're dealing with. Are you part of this? Are you a threat to my company? Adelaide had wandered to the window, watching the motorcade outside. Archie kept his voice low. I'm a father trying to raise his daughter in peace. That's all I am now. Whatever I was before doesn't matter. It matters if it puts my company at risk. Your company? Archie's tone hardened. 3 men tried to abduct my daughter. I don't care about your company. I care about keeping her safe. Then we have common ground. Alexandra pulled out her phone, showing him a series of images. These 3. Do you recognize them? Archie studied the faces. His eyes narrowed in professional assessment. Military training. Private contractor build. Eastern European features on 2 of them. Mercenaries, well-funded ones. How do you know? I know. Alexandra put the phone away, a flicker of unease in her eyes. My head of security thinks this is about me. About something from my past. When I was 14, I was kidnapped. It's not public information. My father paid a fortune to keep it quiet, but whoever's behind this knows. And they're recreating it. Why? I don't know. Revenge against my father. Corporate sabotage. All I know is they're escalating. The 3 men you stopped won't be the last. Archie looked at Adelaide, who was now pressing her nose against the window, drawing patterns in the condensation with her breath. What do you want from me? Protection. For both of us. My security can keep me safe in controlled environments. But you saw a threat and neutralized it in seconds. I need someone who can do that if things go wrong. I'm not a bodyguard. No, you're something better. You're someone they won't see coming. Archie stood, his expression resolute. I appreciate the offer, Miss Rodas, but I left that life behind for a reason. I have a daughter who needs a father, not a weapon. Alexandra stood too, her voice unwavering. Then think about this. If they know about you now, do you really believe they'll leave you alone? You humiliated whoever sent those men. That's not something people like that forgive. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken truth. Archie knew she was right. He had broken the first rule of staying hidden. Never draw attention. But, given the same situation, he would do it again in a heartbeat. I need time, he said finally. You don't have time. Alexandra moved towards the door, her gaze unwavering. My security team has swept this building. You're clean for now, but Mr. Lambert, when they come back, and they will... Don't hesitate to call. She handed him a card. That number reaches me directly, day or night. She left, the echo of her heels fading in the narrow hallway. The motorcade pulled away 15 minutes later, leaving a void in its wake. Adelaide turned from the window, her eyes wide with concern. Daddy, are we in trouble? Archie pulled her into a tight hug, his voice reassuring. No, sweetheart. Everything's going to be fine. But that night, he didn't sleep. He sat by the window with the lights off, watching the street below. At 2 o'clock in the morning, he heard it, the faint whine of a drone hovering outside their window. Small, expensive, equipped with a camera lens that glinted menacingly in the streetlight. Archie moved swiftly and silently. He grabbed the broom from the kitchen, opened the window in one fluid motion, and hurled the broom handle with pinpoint accuracy. The improvised weapon connected with the drone perfectly, sending it spiraling out of control into the alley below. By the time he got downstairs, it was gone. Someone had already retrieved it. He texted the number Alexandra had given him. * they're watching. Her response was immediate. * pack a bag. My team is en route. * no, not yet. * Lambert, don't be stupid. They've got drones on your apartment. You should be scared. * scared and running are different things. There was a long pause. * you're insufferable. You're used to people doing what you say. Fine. But my team is stationed 2 blocks away. If anything happens, they're there in 90 seconds. * noted. Archie went back upstairs, but he didn't sleep. He watched and he thought about Alexandra's words, about how running from the past never truly worked, about how some things once started had to be finished. The next day, Alexandra showed up at his work. Not the apartment, but the tower itself. She found him on the 37th floor, emptying trash in an executive conference room. She closed the door behind her, cutting them off from the outside world. No security detail this time, just her, vulnerable and exposed. I've been thinking about what you said, she began, her voice low and deliberate. Archie continued working, his movements efficient and economical. Which part? The part about being a father, not a weapon. She paused, her eyes meeting his. I understand that, more than you might think. Archie looked at her, really looked at her, seeing past the expensive clothes and the carefully constructed corporate armor. He saw someone who had been profoundly scared at 14 and had never quite stopped being scared since. What happened when you were taken? He asked quietly. Alexandra's carefully constructed composure cracked. She sat down heavily in one of the conference chairs, her posture betraying her unease. 4 days in a basement. They fed me once a day, told me my father didn't care enough to pay, that I was going to die there. Her voice was remarkably steady, but her hands betrayed her, fidgeting nervously in her lap. Then someone came. Not the police, not the FBI, someone else. He got me out, carried me through a forest. I remember his arms felt safe. I remember thinking, if I just hold on, I'd be okay. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with a pain that ran deep. I never saw his face. He was gone by the time the official rescue team arrived. Archie stopped working, his throat tightening. For years, I tried to find him, Alexandra continued, her voice barely a whisper. But there were no records. My father said some operations were too classified to trace, that I should be grateful and move on. She laughed bitterly, the sound devoid of any humor. I never moved on. I built an empire instead, became powerful enough that no one could ever take me again. But it didn't work. I'm still that scared 14-year-old in the dark. You're not, Archie said, his voice firm. That girl survived. This woman thrived. Did she? Or did she just build higher walls? Before Archie could answer, his phone rang, the shrill tone shattering the fragile moment. It was Adelaide's school. His daughter was sick. Nothing serious, but could he come pick her up? He apologized to Alexandra and left, the urgency in his steps betraying his anxiety. But her words lingered in his mind, echoing in the silence. About walls, about survival, about the difference between the two. That evening, while Adelaide slept fitfully with a mild fever, Archie received another text message. Check your door. He cautiously opened the apartment door and found an envelope on the floor. Inside, a photograph. A photograph of Adelaide at school, taken that very day. Someone had been watching them, brazenly violating their fragile sense of security. Archie's hands shook with barely suppressed rage. He dialed Alexandra's number, his voice tight with controlled fury. They photographed my daughter. Come to my office now. Bring Adelaide. It's 11 at night. I don't care. If they're bold enough to surveil a school, they're bold enough to act. My building has security. Yours doesn't. Archie looked at his sleeping daughter, her face flushed with fever. Then, he made the call, the kind of call no parent ever wants to make. He woke her gently, his voice soft and soothing. "Hey sweetheart, we need to go somewhere safe tonight." Adelaide, still groggy with fever, didn't question him. She trusted him implicitly, her faith unwavering. That trust was everything. Alexandra's office occupied the entire top floor of Adelaide Corporation Tower. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture. A space designed to intimidate and inspire awe. But when Archie arrived with Adelaide wrapped snugly in a blanket, Alexandra had transformed it, stripping away its sterile corporate facade. A couch was made up with pillows and a soft comforter. A steaming mug of hot chocolate sat invitingly on a side table. A stack of children's books waited nearby. "I called my assistant," Alexandra explained, her voice softer than Archie had ever heard it. "She has nieces." Adelaide perked up at the sight of the hot chocolate and settled onto the couch, quietly paging through a picture book. While she drank and explored her temporary sanctuary, the adults talked in low voices across the room, their conversation laced with unspoken dread. "My security team found the drone you destroyed," Alexandra said, her expression grim. "Military grade. The kind that costs 6 figures. Whoever's funding this isn't playing games." "I know. There's more. We traced the mercenaries you stopped. They were hired through a shell company that connects to 15 other shell companies. But at the end of the trail, a name surfaces. Dermot Rispin." Archie's blood ran cold. The name struck a chord of buried memories. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be." "Do you know him?" "I know of him. He's a fixer. The kind powerful people call when they need problems to disappear. If he's involved, this isn't just about money or business. It's personal." "Personal, how?" Archie hesitated, weighing his options. Then, he decided that complete honesty was the only viable path forward. 20 years ago, I was part of a counterterrorism unit. We did extractions, hostage rescue. The kind of missions that never made the news. One of those missions involved a senator's daughter who'd been taken by a criminal organization. Dermot Rispin was the middleman. We disrupted his operation and he lost a lot of money. He swore revenge against everyone involved. Alexandra's face drained of color, leaving her skin ashen. "What was the senator's name?" "Rodas. Senator Malcolm Rodas." The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Alexandra sat down heavily, as if the weight of the revelation had physically knocked the wind out of her. "You..." Her voice was barely audible. "You were the one who saved me." Archie nodded slowly, his gaze filled with a mixture of regret and resignation. "I didn't know it was you. I didn't know you were Malcolm Rodas's daughter. You were just a scared kid who needed help. You carried me through the forest. You told me stories to keep me calm. You said my father loved me very much and that I'd see him soon. I remember." Alexandra's eyes welled with tears she refused to let fall, a testament to years of carefully cultivated emotional control. "I've been looking for you for 20 years, and you've been here all along, cleaning my building. I didn't know." "How could you not know, Alexandra?" "I've extracted dozens of people. I never learned their names. It was safer that way, for them and for me. When I left the unit, I left everything behind, including the faces of the people I saved." She stood abruptly, her movements agitated, and walked to the window, her reflection a ghostly silhouette against the backdrop of the glittering city lights. "So, Dermot Rispin is doing this because of me. Because my father refused to pay the ransom 20 years ago, and your team came instead. Revenge delayed is revenge amplified," Archie said, his voice grim. "He's had 2 decades to build resources and plan this. Then he's not just after me. He's after you too. And Adelaide." Archie looked at his daughter, who had finally succumbed to sleep on the couch, her small face peaceful and untroubled. "I won't let him near her." We won't," Alexandra corrected, her voice filled with a newfound resolve. "You saved me once. Let me help save her." The next 72 hours moved at a breakneck pace. a blur of strategic planning and mounting tension. Alexandra's security team thoroughly swept the building, discovering 2 more hidden surveillance devices and identifying 3 potential breach points. They also uncovered evidence that Dermot Rispin had moles embedded within Adelaide Corporation, a maintenance worker who had been strategically placed 6 months prior, and a mid-level executive who had been turned through blackmail. But Alexandra and Archie possessed advantages that Dermot Rispin hadn't anticipated. Alexandra had vast resources at her disposal. Archie had unparalleled training and a relentless determination. And, together, they shared something that Rispin could never factor into his cold, calculated plans. They both cared deeply about the same thing, keeping Adelaide safe. The attack came on the 4th night, swift and brutal. Adelaide was sleeping soundly in Alexandra's transformed office, guarded by 2 of Alexandra's most trusted security personnel. Archie and Alexandra were meticulously reviewing building schematics when the alarms abruptly went silent. Not triggered, but silenced. Someone had expertly hacked their security system, plunging the building into a state of chilling vulnerability. "They're here," Archie said, his voice devoid of emotion, his eyes already scanning the room for potential weapons. He grabbed a fire extinguisher from the corner. It was heavy, blunt, and readily available, the perfect tool for the task at hand. "Get Adelaide to the panic room now." "Where are you going?" Alexandra's voice was laced with concern, but her resolve remained unbroken. "To buy you time." Archie moved through the darkened corridors like a wraith, his senses heightened, his movements silent and lethal. The emergency lights cast eerie red shadows, painting the scene with an unsettling crimson hue. He could hear them, the muffled sounds of footsteps, carefully trying to be quiet, but failing to completely mask their presence. Multiple teams, well-coordinated and highly trained. He estimated at least 8 hostiles were converging on their location. The smart play, the logical course of action, would have been to hide, to wait for the police to arrive. But police response times were unpredictable, and time was a luxury they couldn't afford. Adelaide didn't have time. He took down the first 2 mercenaries in a supply closet, his movements quick, efficient, and utterly silent. He then used their discarded radios to eavesdrop on the others, gleaning valuable information about their tactics and objectives. They were systematically searching the building, floor by floor, their primary target Alexandra. They had no knowledge of Archie's presence, a critical advantage he intended to exploit to the fullest. The 3rd and 4th mercenaries fell in the stairwell, their demise swift and brutal. Archie used the confined space to his advantage, turning the narrow passage into a deadly choke point. The mercenaries couldn't effectively surround him, couldn't capitalize on their superior numbers. One by one, they stumbled, succumbed, and fell silent. But the 5th mercenary was different, smarter, more resourceful. He didn't come through the door, didn't fall for Archie's carefully laid trap. He came through the window, a sudden and unexpected assault. Utilizing repelling gear, he crashed through the reinforced glass of a nearby conference room, showering the floor with shards of shattered glass, and nearly caught Archie off guard. A brutal, close-quarters fight ensued, a desperate dance of violence and survival. Archie took a deep knife slash across his ribs, the searing pain a stark reminder of the danger he faced. The mercenary, in turn, caught the full force of a heavy conference chair to the skull, his consciousness abruptly extinguished. By the time Archie finally reached the top floor, his shirt was soaked with blood, a crimson tapestry woven from his own wounds and the blood of his fallen adversaries. He was breathing hard, his lungs burning, his knuckles split and raw. But Adelaide's makeshift sanctuary was just ahead, a beacon of hope in the encroaching darkness. And standing between him and that room were the last 3 mercenaries, their faces grim and determined. And, behind them, Dermot Rispin himself. Dermot Rispin was in his late 50s, his hair a distinguished shade of gray, his features sharp and refined. He possessed the air of cultured sophistication that villains in movies always seem to embody. He wore an expensive, impeccably tailored suit and held a pistol with a casual confidence that belied a clear understanding of how to use it. Archie knew, with absolute certainty, that the final confrontation had arrived. He braced himself, preparing to unleash the full extent of his dormant skills, ready to do whatever it took to protect the two women who had, in their own ways, become his world. Lambert? Or should I call you Ghost? Dermot's lips stretched into a predatory smile, the kind that promised pain, long overdue. That was your call sign, wasn't it, Ghost? 20 years. 20 years I've been waiting for this moment. Archie met his gaze, unflinching. Then you've wasted 20 years of your life. Dermot chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. Oh, I don't think so, Lambert. While you've been scrubbing floors, I've built an empire. So who's the real fool here? The one sitting on a throne or the one cleaning its steps? Archie's voice was low, dangerous. The man whose daughter is still breathing. The smile vanished from Dermot's face as if wiped away. The air in the room seemed to thicken with unspoken venom. Not for long. That night, you cost me everything. My reputation, my connections, millions, Lambert, millions down the drain. And all for what? To save some politician's brat? A spoiled little princess? To save a child, Archie corrected, his eyes hardening. That's all she was, Dermot. A child. A defenseless kid. And now she's a CEO, about to perish in a tragic accident. Dermot finished, gesturing languidly to his men. Finish him, slowly. Make him understand the weight of his choices. 3 hulking figures stepped forward, mercenaries hardened by years of violence. Archie was tired, battered, outnumbered, but the years had taught him things combat manuals never could. He knew how to fight when every breath, every heartbeat, was a victory. The first mercenary came in high, telegraphing his punch. Archie ducked under the clumsy swing, driving his shoulder into the man's soft gut. Using the man's weight and momentum, he flipped him into the path of the second, creating a tangled mess of limbs and curses. They crashed to the ground, a thrashing heap. The third mercenary, smarter than the others, drew a knife, the glint of steel reflecting the harsh overhead lights. Archie reacted instantly, catching the man's wrist in a vice grip. A sharp twist, the sickening snap of bone, and the man's scream was cut short as Archie silenced him with a brutal elbow to the temple. The first 2 were struggling to their feet. Archie grabbed a heavy desk lamp, the cord whipping as he swung it like a makeshift club. Glass shattered, showering the room as the lamp connected with one mercenary's skull. He crumpled. The other lunged, desperation etched on his face. Archie sidestepped, hooking the man's ankle, sending him sprawling. The sickening thud of skull meeting steel as the man's head collided with a filing cabinet echoed in the room, making Dermot wince. Now it was just Dermot, his face pale, his hand trembling slightly as he raised his pistol. You should have stayed hidden, Lambert. You should have disappeared. I tried, Archie said, his voice strained but steady. But you found me, because you were sloppy, Dermot. Sentimental. That little girl. She made you weak. Archie advanced, each step measured. No, he said, his voice gaining strength. A child made me strong. Dermot fired. The bullet whizzed past Archie's head, grazing his shoulder. He kept coming. Dermot fired again. Missed. Then Archie was on him, a whirlwind of fury. The pistol clattered to the floor as they went down, a tangle of limbs and grunts. Dermot was trained, years of experience in boardrooms and back alleys. But Archie was driven, fueled by a primal need to protect. And desperation, Archie knew, always trumped training. It ended quickly. Dermot, unconscious, lay sprawled on the floor. Archie, bleeding and exhausted, leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe. Behind him, a door creaked open. Adelaide stood there, tears streaming down her face, her small frame trembling. Alexandra was right behind her, her face a mask of worry. Daddy! Adelaide ran to him, launching herself into his arms. Archie caught her with his good arm, holding her tight. It's okay, baby. It's over. It's all over. But Adelaide pulled back, her eyes wide with concern. You're hurt. Just a little, Archie reassured her, forcing a smile. Daddy's tough, Alexandra said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. "You're very tough." She was crying too, tears silently tracing paths down her cheeks. "Thank you, Archie." Archie looked at her over Adelaide's head. "You'd have done the same for me. I don't know if I would have been brave enough." He paused. Bravery isn't about being fearless. It's about being terrified and doing it anyway. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. They arrived 12 minutes later, a swarm of flashing lights and shouted commands. The FBI followed 20 minutes after that, their dark suits and grim faces a stark contrast to the chaos of the scene. By sunrise, Dermot Rispin was in federal custody, facing a laundry list of charges that would keep him behind bars for the rest of his life. His mercenaries were rounded up, his corrupt moles within Adelaide Corporation exposed and removed. Archie Lambert sat in a sterile hospital bed, a needle expertly stitching his wounds. Adelaide was asleep in the chair beside him, her small hand resting trustingly in his. The government came with offers, a return to active service, full reinstatement, a substantial raise. Archie listened politely, his gaze fixed on his sleeping daughter, and politely declined. "My daughter needs a father, not a weapon. I'm done being a weapon." They accepted his answer and left. But Alexandra stayed, lingering in the doorway. "I have an offer too," she said softly. "Head of security for Adelaide Corporation. A real salary, benefits, an apartment in a building with actual working heat. And, most importantly, hours that will allow you to be there when your daughter needs you." "I'm not qualified," Archie said, surprised. Alexandra raised an eyebrow. "You stopped a coordinated assault by 8 trained operatives. I'd say you're overqualified. And before you say no, think about Adelaide. She deserves better than a one-room apartment and second-hand clothes." Archie looked at his sleeping daughter, his expression conflicted. "I don't want charity." "It's not charity, Archie. It's payment for services rendered. And—" Alexandra paused, her voice softening. "Maybe it's more than that. You saved my life twice. The least I can do is help improve yours." "Why?" "Because 20 years ago you showed me that good people still exist. That someone would come when I needed them most. Let me be that person for Adelaide. Please." Archie was quiet for a long time, the weight of his past and the uncertainty of his future heavy on his shoulders. Finally, he spoke. "She'd need to stay in her current school, and I'd need weekends off." Alexandra smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that lit up her face. "Done." 3 months later, on a bright Saturday morning, 3 people walked through the park near Alexandra's building. Archie, his shoulder fully healed, pushed Adelaide on the swings, her laughter echoing through the air. Alexandra sat nearby on a park bench, watching them with an expression that bordered on serenity. She traded her power suits for jeans and a comfortable sweater, letting her hair down, literally and figuratively. The hard edges of the CEO had softened, replaced by a warmth that radiated from within. Adelaide jumped off the swing mid-arc, landing perfectly, and ran to them, her eyes shining with excitement. "Did you see? I flew." "You did?" Archie said, catching her in his arms, lifting her high in the air. "You flew like the best bird ever." Adelaide took both their hands, Archie's on one side, Alexandra's on the other. "Can we get ice cream?" "It's 10 o'clock in the morning," Alexandra protested, feigning disapproval. "Ice cream doesn't have a time," Adelaide argued with the flawless logic of a 7-year-old. Alexandra looked at Archie, a silent question in her eyes. He shrugged, a hint of amusement playing on his lips. "The kid makes a good point." They walked together toward the ice cream cart, a makeshift family forged in the crucible of violence and loss. Adelaide swung between them, chattering about a book she was reading, a new friend she'd made, and a beautiful butterfly she'd seen fluttering through the park. Normal things, beautiful things. At one point, Adelaide looked up at her father, her brow furrowed with a lingering worry. "Daddy?" "Yeah, sweetheart? We're safe now, right? The bad men are gone." Archie squeezed her hand, his gaze meeting hers. "We're safe, Adelaide. Promise." "Good," she said, her face relaxing. "Because I like it here. I like Alexandra. I like our new home. She paused, her eyes searching his. Do you think Mommy would like it, too? Archie's throat tightened, a familiar ache in his chest. He looked at Alexandra, who had tears in her eyes. Yeah, baby, I think she'd love it. She'd be proud of you, and me too. Adelaide seemed satisfied, her worries momentarily forgotten. She skipped ahead toward the ice cream cart, leaving the two adults walking behind, a comfortable silence settling between them. Thank you, Alexandra said softly, her voice filled with emotion, for letting me be a part of this. Thank you for giving us a chance at something better. Is it better? Archie asked, his gaze fixed on his daughter, laughing in the sunshine. Safe and happy and loved. Yeah, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Yeah, it's better. Alexandra slipped her hand into his, her fingers interlacing with his. Not romantic, not yet, but promising. The tentative beginning of something that might grow, if given time and care. Archie let it happen, allowing himself to hope for the first time in 7 years. He let himself imagine a future that wasn't just about survival, but about living. They reached the ice cream cart. Adelaide ordered strawberry, her face smeared with pink. Alexandra ordered vanilla, a classic choice. Archie ordered chocolate, the familiar comfort a balm to his soul. They sat on a park bench, 3 people who'd found each other in the darkness and decided to build something beautiful in the light. Daddy, Adelaide said through a mouthful of strawberry ice cream. You're the best daddy in the whole world. Archie kissed the top of her head. You're the best Adelaide in the whole world. She giggled, a pure, joyful sound. Alexandra smiled, a deep, genuine smile that reached her eyes. And for a moment, everything was exactly as it should be. Safe, warm, together. The past had tried to destroy them, but they'd survived. More than survived. They'd found a way forward, not by forgetting what came before, but by refusing to let it define what came next. In the distance, the city hummed with life, a constant reminder of the world outside their fragile bubble. The Adelaide Corporation Tower gleamed against the sky, a symbol of Alexandra's strength and resilience. Somewhere, bad people still existed. Somewhere, darkness still waited. But here, in this moment, there was only sunshine and ice cream and the sound of a little girl's laughter. And that was enough. That was everything.